Hello, everybody. It's Chad Warren from the Adventurer Channel on YouTube and the adventurerchannel.com/blog. Today, I want to highlight a Mr. Jason Horsley. Okay, how did I find out about Jason? From SB Alger, because I've started to watch the Prescription Only Picture Show with SB, Jim, Tracy, and guests, Tracy Twyman. And because I am so addicted to the internet and YouTube content, I'm striving to look for more content beyond the echo chamber of my current subscriptions. So I finally started looking at people's liked playlists, so I would advise you to consider curating a liked playlist for other people to see what you're into. And in general, I think what we as I don't know how do I want to define us in this example. Us as people that enjoy videos on YouTube for the purpose of becoming better people, and the emphasis of my adventure channel is to find a way to get value out of what we learn so that we're not just addicted to content and develop this new perversion called infotainment. So some very tiny steps I'm making in that regard are to celebrate other people who I do value. I mean, that seems to be more valuable to me than starting yet another podcast. We need to focus on coordinating between us. Somebody that does a good job in that regard is a channel called No Race or Dante, and he has focused on the topic of communitarianism, and so he's sharing all these other people's work that help define that complicated term, which can generally be thought of as a Masonic combination of seeming opposites of capitalism and communism. But so if I go to SB's playlists, we see liked videos, and then Logos Beyond Logic Continued, Jason Horsley. Okay, so then I will show you, let's see, the first video of Jason's I watched. Okay. News from the Front Line in the End Times was the first video. And then here we have Jordan Peterson describing his self-assessment that he will probably drown. And then Jason said, let's save Jordan Peterson. And I asked what he meant by that, but I think that I could use Jordan to represent this growing class of us who, like the X-Men, are gaining our superpowers through healing from trauma. The children of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and satanic ritual abuse, which evidently is a big focus of Jason's. valuing the negative circumstances we find ourselves in. I have inherited money, and I'm also now much poorer than most people. So I'm very stoked to be in this camper, even if I don't have enough money for propane right now. Relative to where I'm at, those things are helping me restore my humanity, which is this romantic, animalistic self that's quickly being discarded as easily as I'm holding this smartphone held in this transhumanist limbo between idolizing ancient Atlantean societies and knowing that, according to the story, those people, much more advanced than us, appear to have destroyed themselves time and time again because of addiction to technology. Why do I like Jason Horsley's work in my first impression here? This review seems to reflect my sentiment. Anything Jason Horsley writes compels me to an uncanny degree. The stakes feel enormous. He exemplifies a mind grappling to the very edge of itself and to the edge of collective human experience simultaneously. Language, in his hands, seems pressured into use as spacecraft into unknown territory. From Jonathan Lethem, author of Chronic City. Yeah, he appears very thoughtful in that he values philosophy, constantly sharpening his blade of intellect through writing and discourse. Here's the first piece of his that I read. The life and loves of a failed misanthropist. I had to look up the word misanthrope. I've heard it. I didn't know what it means. It's funny because it describes someone who I see myself to be, which is I am a grumpy middle-aged man now because I just never have really got along with other people very well. And it's paradoxical. I was just chatting with a friend on Facebook and saying that we felt similar because by my always feeling as an outsider, even with outsider types of groups like the punk rock scene and Hot Springs, for example, I always feel like this alien and I'm trying to understand what everybody else seems to understand very easily. And that helps me to adapt to all these different people. But then over the long haul, I will become irritated and, and like too sensitive compared to other people to what I should just accept that they're going to think that way and there's nothing I can do to change that. I guess it's because I feel I have to change so much to be around other people that I expect that same thing out of other people, and that's a general behavior we have. But here we go. Let's face it, I'm irresistibly drawn to investigate the dark underbelly of the world. Here, here. And nothing seems to ever change that. But there's no end to the underbelly. So if I'm forever shedding light on what is fearsome and loathsome to me, when do I get to write about what I love? Graham Greene once said something about how those who love humanity have no time for human beings. That sounds like people that I perceive to be on the opposite of me, or like social justice warriors, people that talk about concepts like wanting to end racism and all of that, but then Democrats typically. But like I had this experience where I was with a friend at a local pub, and one of his friends manages a local restaurant, and I said, "Oh, that's cool." And it is like in a different neighborhood that is closer to the university in a more urban ghetto area. And he said, "Yeah, we have that restaurant to keep the black people from coming to the other restaurant here in this neighborhood." And I'm like, shocked, right? Because, I don't really associate with these terms of politics. It's all a Masonic scam to me. But to like, even if he was kidding, I mean, that's definitely a real way that people behave. They talk all this good game, but it's like, Margaret Sanger, I really love people. That's why we need to kill all these miserable ones. Socialism, that kind of a thing. Okay, so I, Jason locates himself on the opposite end of that spectrum. As much as I loathe humanity, I seem to have quite a lot of time, interest, and love for my fellow human beings. I feel you there. And of course, that's a perfect interconnection between this virtual kinship we have through the internet, like keeping each other at arm's length, but then it increases the ability to have this personal sharing. I think this is called transpersonalism. And that's also part of this Gnostic revival. If you've got more and more people that are having to rely on their own discernment versus, baseball and all these manufactured things, as the same people that built all that are tearing it all down, then we're having to find who we fit with and how we can get along better. This has been my philosophical position, at least. And lastly, I have been forced to put it to the test and leave my armchair and pipe behind. That's what I'm trying to do at the Adventure Channel, is to get us to get out, right? So when I'm saying adventure, I'm saying like Legend of Zelda adventure. Like we're so deep in our own point of view that just to interact with each other online can be a hurdle, let alone to learn skills of organizing. Like, that's what I would like to learn from people that were involved in older successful unions. And I would like to figure out a way to cooperate with veterans groups. Those are probably people like a bunch of conspiracy theorists that may be disgruntled and need to find a mission, a course that we can do something positive from where we're at. This is not from any conscious preference or choice. In fact, there is resistance in me to writing about this, but there's also resistance to not writing it. There's a feeling of urgency, a desire to nudge myself out of a habitual groove into new tunes, besides just recycling or perfecting old familiar ones. Again, high resonance here, a recognition of that need, even if it's still coming from this highly intellectual writing position. This suggests that there are two of me. There is the soul of me, and there is the false identity. The false identity always has fish to fry. He has important pursuits, no matter how trivial, and sees anyone and everything as either a means or an obstacle to whatever ephemeral, elusive end he is currently chasing. Always the same end, really, to feel validated and appreciated, to feel loved. I'm just thinking about used car salesman types of sociopathic cult leaders who very much know how to connect to people's senses, sense of what they need in order to get what they need. It's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. Somebody like myself that more is a threat to people because of having a hyper individualistic point of view, that I can be irritated to the point of wanting to fight them for being disrespected in my perception. That's all I have, or this recognition of a value system. And so that's my weakness, is to expect other people to appreciate what I do. The soul of me, on the other hand, never closes. It is always open to whatever is arriving, always seeking an encounter with it. It is always eager to experience a connection to other souls, and even objects have souls of a sort. There is only room in any given moment for one of these to meet and greet the new arrivals. Either my soul or my false identity gets jurisdiction over my awareness and of those it interacts with. When I go to work at the thrift store, feelings of irritation and resentment quickly arise within me. As the first customer comes to the door, what do they want? Or the first pile of unwanted donations arrives, I feel overwhelmed. Like most people with day jobs, I'd rather be somewhere else doing something different, or bring a little laptop in so I can do something else. But as soon as I begin reading emails or writing a response, reading a PDF or doing research, an interruption comes, even if only the interruption of, "Hi, how are you?" Boy, I sure know this from a friend that co-owns a popular coffee shop in Little Rock, River City Coffee. I mean, he's there many hours of the day, and he has to put aside his own needs of eating breakfast and that type of thing, uh, because people are always coming into that cafe, and that's the price that he pays for having such an inviting social hub. And that person is an exemplar of service to others, and appreciating where you are in life. I'll let you read the rest there. Autoculture.com/blog is the name of his site. I decided to look up the etymology of aut, from Greek autos, or self. So self, instead of agriculture, it would be to culture oneself, to grow oneself to be the best they can be through attention. No, I think I will just leave it at that. The last thing that I was enjoying from Jasun, I guess this is it here, the space between and the secret commonwealth. It was a live YouTube. And boy, he does a real good job of something that I find difficult, in that when you do a live video, you want to have interaction through the chat, but it's pretty hard to hold on to your point, right? So Jasun appears to be like somebody that values meditation and introspection, so he's able to hold that line very well. And he seems to have the skill of being kind, but able to defend himself against people trying to take his energy. He was describing people coming into the thrift store, and really, a lot of them are there to share their needs and their problems. That's it. Thank you very much.